The Unbreakable Mind. Train your brain to achieve mental resilience in 7 days. I want to tell you about the most important 7 days of my life. Not because anything magical happened. Not because I won the lottery or met someone famous. But because during those 7 days, I stopped waiting for someone to save me and finally learned to save myself. Preface. The week that saved my life. My name is Marcus Reed, and 3 years ago, I was drowning. My business had failed after 5 years of struggle. My marriage was hanging by a thread. My bank account was overdrawn, and my confidence was shattered. I was 38 years old and felt like I had wasted my entire adult life chasing dreams that never materialized. But the worst part wasn't the external failures. The worst part was the narrative I had constructed in my mind. I was waiting for the right opportunity to present itself, waiting for someone to recognize my potential, waiting for circumstances to improve, waiting for a mentor, an investor, a lucky break, or divine intervention to rescue me from the mess I had created. That waiting nearly destroyed me. Then, during one particularly dark week in November, something shifted. It wasn't a single dramatic moment or sudden revelation. It was a series of experiences, conversations, and realizations that accumulated over 7 days and fundamentally changed how I understood success, failure, and personal responsibility. By the end of that week, I had declared independence from the rescue fantasy that had paralyzed me for years. I had accepted that nobody was coming to save me, and that this truth was the most liberating thing I had ever learned. This book chronicles those 7 days, but more than that, it provides a roadmap for your own transformation. Each day represents a fundamental shift in mindset that, when embraced fully, will free you from dependence on external salvation and empower you to create the life you want through your own effort and discipline. Over the past 3 years since that transformative week, I've rebuilt my business more successfully than before, strengthened my marriage, achieved financial security, and developed an unshakable confidence that comes from knowing I can handle whatever life presents. Not because I'm special or blessed with unusual advantages, but because I stopped waiting for rescue and became my own savior. But on the other side of that discomfort lies freedom. The freedom to pursue your goals without needing anyone's permission. The freedom to fail without needing anyone's rescue. The freedom to succeed, knowing you earned it through your own capability and effort. The principles you're about to learn aren't theoretical. They're battle-tested truths I discovered through failure, applied through discipline, and have since taught to hundreds of others who were trapped in the same waiting pattern that once imprisoned me. This journey will be uncomfortable. You'll confront truths about yourself that you've been avoiding. You'll recognize patterns you've been defending. You'll face the reality that much of your struggle has been self-created through waiting rather than acting, hoping rather than building, and depending rather than developing. Are you ready to stop waiting? Are you ready to declare independence from the rescue that never comes? Are you ready to discover that the person capable of transforming your life has been there all along, waiting for you to activate them? Then let's begin. Day 1 starts now. Day 1. The death of the rescue fantasy. I woke up that Monday morning to 3 text messages that would change everything. The first was from my business partner telling me he was pulling out of our venture immediately. The second was from our largest client canceling their contract, effective immediately. The third was from my bank informing me that my account was overdrawn and several payments had bounced. Monday, when the bottom falls out. In less than 5 minutes, my already struggling business had effectively collapsed. My carefully constructed plan for gradually turning things around had been obliterated. The safety net I thought I had was gone. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, and felt the panic rising in my chest. My wife was still asleep beside me, unaware that our financial situation had just gone from difficult to catastrophic. My mind immediately started spinning through possible rescues. Maybe my partner would reconsider if I called him. Maybe the client could be convinced to stay. Maybe my parents could loan me money to bridge the gap. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had been here before, facing crisis and looking for external rescue. And every time someone or something had bailed me out, I had learned the wrong lesson. I had learned that if things got bad enough, rescue would arrive. That belief had made me reckless with risk, passive in the face of warning signs, and dependent on factors beyond my control. This time, sitting in the grey morning light, I made a different choice. Instead of immediately reaching for my phone to call potential rescuers, I sat with the discomfort. I let myself feel the fear, the panic, the shame of failure without immediately trying to make it someone else's problem to solve. In that moment of sitting with my reality, rather than fleeing from it, something crystallized. Nobody was going to save me. Not my partner, not my clients, not my family, not the universe. I was alone with my choices, my capabilities, and my willingness to do whatever it took to rebuild. And strangely, that realization didn't make me feel more afraid. It made me feel awake for the first time in years. Before I go further with my story, I need to explain the psychological trap I had been living in for most of my adult life. Psychologists call it learned helplessness, and it's one of the most destructive patterns a person can develop. Learned helplessness is a mental state where someone believes they have no control over their circumstances, even when opportunities for action exist. It develops when people repeatedly experience situations where their actions seem to have no effect on outcomes, leading them to stop trying to change their situation even when change becomes possible. The psychology of learned helplessness. Successful entrepreneurs believed that their choices and efforts were the primary drivers of their outcomes. Failed entrepreneurs believed that success depended primarily on external factors like luck, timing, connections, or market conditions. This belief became self-fulfilling because it determined how they responded to obstacles. When successful entrepreneurs faced setbacks, they asked, "What can I do differently?" When struggling entrepreneurs faced setbacks, they asked, "Why does this keep happening to me?" One question led to learning and adjustment. The other led to victimhood and passivity. I discovered this concept years earlier while researching why some entrepreneurs succeeded while others with equal talent and resources failed. The differentiating factor wasn't intelligence, education, or even work ethic. It was the fundamental belief about whether their actions mattered. Breaking the pattern, I realized that morning that I had spent years in learned helplessness, waiting for rescue because I had convinced myself that I couldn't succeed without it. Every time someone had helped me, it had reinforced this belief. Every time circumstances had improved without significant effort on my part, it had taught me that waiting was a viable strategy. But that pattern had to end, because the rescue I had been waiting for wasn't coming, and I couldn't afford to keep waiting. After sitting with my crisis for an hour, I did something I had never done before. I made a list of everything within my control, not what I wished I could control, or what I hoped others would do, just what I could actually influence through my own decisions and actions. None of these actions would magically solve my crisis, but each one would move me slightly forward, and each one depended only on me. I didn't need anyone's permission, cooperation, or blessing to take these steps. The list was shorter than I wanted, but longer than I feared. I could contact other potential clients. I could restructure my business to operate without my partner. I could reduce my personal expenses dramatically. I could take on contract work to generate immediate income. I could sell assets I didn't absolutely need. I could have honest conversations with creditors about payment plans. I spent that entire Monday making calls, sending emails, and taking action on items from my control list. Some attempts failed immediately. Several people I contacted didn't respond or declined to help. But a few conversations opened possibilities I hadn't anticipated. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Nobody is coming to save me. This is the most terrifying and liberating truth I've ever accepted. Tomorrow, I build." By evening, I hadn't solved my crisis, but I had done something more important. I had proven to myself that I could take meaningful action, even in the face of catastrophe. I had demonstrated that I didn't need to wait for rescue to start building my own solution. Your Day 1 Challenge. The first step in your transformation is recognizing where you're waiting for rescue instead of taking action. This requires brutal honesty about the narratives you've constructed to explain your circumstances. Take out a notebook or open a document on your computer. Write down every significant area of your life where you're not getting the results you want. This might include your career, business, relationships, health, finances, or personal development. For each area, write down the story you tell yourself about why you're not succeeding. Be honest. Include all the external factors you typically blame: the economy, your industry, other people's behavior, lack of opportunities, bad timing, insufficient resources. This exercise isn't about denying that external factors exist or matter. It's about reclaiming your power by identifying what you can control, regardless of what you can't control. It's about finding your leverage points, the places where your effort can create change even when circumstances are difficult. Now, here's the critical part. For each external factor you've listed, write down one action you could take that doesn't depend on that factor changing. If you're waiting for your employer to recognize your value, what could you do to demonstrate it more clearly or to create your own opportunities? If you're waiting for more resources, what could you do with the resources you already have? If you're waiting for people to change their behavior, what could you change about your own? The rescue fantasy is comfortable because it absolves you of responsibility, but it's also a prison that keeps you dependent on factors beyond your control. Day 1 is about recognizing this pattern and making the conscious choice to break it. Tomorrow, we'll explore how to build the mental fortress required to maintain your independence when doubt and discouragement try to pull you back into waiting. But today, your only job is recognition and one small action from your control list. Take that action before you sleep tonight. Make it something simple enough that you can accomplish it even in your current emotional state. The size of the action matters far less than proving to yourself that you can act independently of external rescue. Day 2. Building your mental fortress. Your transformation has begun. My father wrote that perhaps it was time to give up entrepreneurship and return to corporate employment where I could have security and benefits. My best friend suggested that I was being stubborn by continuing to pursue a failed business model. Even my wife gently questioned whether I was making decisions based on pride rather than wisdom. I woke up Tuesday morning with renewed energy from the actions I had taken the day before, but that energy was immediately tested when I opened my email and saw messages from 3 people close to me, all expressing concern about my situation and suggesting I consider more realistic options. Tuesday, when everyone tells you to quit. This is the challenge you'll face on day 2 of your transformation. The moment you stop waiting for rescue and start taking independent action, people will question your choices. They'll offer advice based on what they would do, warnings based on what they fear, and suggestions based on what they believe is possible. Each message was well-intentioned. Each person genuinely cared about me and wanted to protect me from further pain. But each message was also based on their own fears, limitations, and experiences, not on my capabilities or vision. Your mental fortress is your ability to receive input from others without allowing it to penetrate your core conviction about what you're building and why it matters. Here's what I learned that Tuesday morning as I read those concerned messages. When people tell you something is unrealistic, impossible, or too risky, they're almost always talking about themselves, not about you. Understanding the projection problem. My father's suggestion that I return to corporate work wasn't based on an assessment of my entrepreneurial capabilities. It was based on his own fear of financial insecurity and his belief that corporate employment was the only path to stability. He was projecting his values and experiences onto my situation. My friend's concern about my stubbornness wasn't based on evidence that my business model was flawed. It was based on his own discomfort with risk and his belief that failure once meant failure always. He was projecting his risk tolerance onto my choices. Even my wife's gentle questioning, though coming from love, was influenced by her own anxiety about our financial situation and her conditioning about what constitutes responsible decision-making. None of these people were wrong to have their perspectives, but their perspectives were filtered through their own experiences, fears, and limitations. Allowing their filtered views to determine my choices would mean living my life according to their constraints rather than my own capabilities. The architecture of conviction. This understanding transformed how I received feedback. Instead of feeling discouraged by their doubts, I became curious about what their concerns revealed about their own mental models. Instead of defending my choices, I thanked them for caring while maintaining my own conviction. Building a mental fortress isn't about becoming arrogant or closed to feedback. It's about developing the discernment to separate useful input from projection and maintaining conviction in your vision, even when surrounded by doubt. That Tuesday, I created what I now call my conviction architecture, a structured approach to protecting my vision while remaining open to learning. This architecture consists of 4 levels of mental defense, each serving a specific purpose. The first level is vision clarity. I spent an hour that morning writing out exactly what I was building, why it mattered, and what success would look and feel like when I achieved it. This wasn't a business plan or strategy document. It was a detailed description of the future I was committed to creating, written in such vivid detail that I could close my eyes and experience it as if it already existed. This clarity became my North Star. When doubt crept in, I could return to this vision and remember why I was enduring the difficulty. When others questioned my path, I could measure their advice against this vision, rather than being swayed by their certainty. The second level is evidence logging. I started keeping a daily record of every action I took and every result it produced, no matter how small. This evidence served two purposes. First, it provided proof that my efforts were creating movement even when progress seemed invisible. Second, it gave me concrete data to reference when my confidence wavered. The third level is selective input. I made a list of people whose advice I would actively seek because they had achieved what I was pursuing or had demonstrated wisdom in navigating similar challenges. I also made a list of people whose opinions I would politely acknowledge but not allow to influence my decisions because they lacked relevant experience or had different values and goals than mine. By Tuesday evening, my evidence log already contained proof that my Monday actions had created results. One potential client had responded positively. One creditor had agreed to a payment plan. One contract work opportunity had materialized. None of these outcomes solved my crisis, but each one proved that my independent action was creating change. Neuroplasticity and mental rewiring. This wasn't about disrespecting anyone or becoming isolated. It was about being strategic, about whose voices I allowed into my head during a vulnerable period when my conviction was still forming. The people who loved me could support me emotionally without needing to guide me strategically. The fourth level is daily reinforcement. I committed to spending 15 minutes each morning reviewing my vision, reading my evidence log, and reminding myself why other people's doubts reflected their limitations rather than mine. This daily practice created mental momentum that carried me through moments of discouragement. For years, my brain had developed strong neural pathways associated with external dependence. When I faced challenges, my default response was to look outside myself for solutions, support, or rescue. These pathways had been reinforced through repetition until they became automatic. What I didn't fully understand at the time but have since learned is that building a mental fortress is actually a process of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural pathways and reorganize itself. Creating new pathways of self-reliance required deliberately practicing different responses until they became equally automatic. Every time I chose to act independently rather than wait for help, I strengthened the self-reliance pathway. Every time I maintained my conviction despite doubt from others, I reinforced the mental fortress. Understanding this timeline was encouraging because it meant my struggle wasn't permanent. The difficulty I felt in maintaining conviction wasn't evidence that I was failing. It was evidence that my brain was rewiring itself. Each day of practice was literally changing the structure of my neural pathways. Neuroscience research shows that it takes consistent practice over approximately 60 days to create new automatic responses. This meant that the first 2 months of my transformation would require conscious effort and discipline. But after that threshold, self-reliance would become my default response rather than something I had to force myself to practice. Your Day 2 Challenge. Second, start your evidence log. Review the action you took yesterday after Day 1's challenge. Record exactly what you did and any results it produced, no matter how small. Commit to updating this log daily with your actions and their outcomes. This creates proof of progress that your brain can reference when it tries to convince you that nothing is working. Today is about constructing your own mental fortress using the 4-level architecture I've described. This requires focused time and deep reflection, but the investment will protect your transformation throughout this journey. First, write your vision in vivid detail. Don't limit yourself to what seems realistic or what others have achieved. Describe the life, business, relationships, and impact you're committed to creating. Write it in present tense, as if you're already living it. Include sensory details, emotions, and specific outcomes. This becomes your reference point whenever doubt arises. Third, create your input filter. Make 2 lists: people whose advice you'll actively seek, and people whose opinions you'll acknowledge but not internalize. For the first list, choose people who have achieved what you're pursuing or who demonstrate wisdom you respect. For the second list, include well-meaning people who lack relevant experience or whose values differ significantly from yours. Fourth, establish your daily reinforcement practice. Set a specific time each morning when you'll review your vision for 5 minutes, read your evidence log for 5 minutes, and remind yourself for 5 minutes why you're capable of achieving your goals, regardless of what others believe. These 4 practices create the mental infrastructure that will support your conviction through the challenges ahead. Without this fortress, you'll be vulnerable to every doubt, every criticism, and every well-meaning person who tries to protect you by encouraging you to settle for less than you're capable of achieving. Your mental fortress isn't about shutting people out. It's about ensuring that your vision, your evidence, and your conviction are louder than the noise of other people's limitations and fears. Tomorrow, we'll explore how to build the daily discipline that transforms conviction into results. But today, construct your fortress. Your independence depends on it. Day 3. The discipline that changes everything. Wednesday, when motivation dies. Wednesday morning, I woke up exhausted. The adrenaline that had fueled my Monday action and Tuesday conviction had evaporated. My crisis hadn't magically resolved. The responses I had received from my Monday outreach were mostly rejections or silence. The encouragement I felt from taking action had been replaced by the grinding reality that this transformation was going to be harder and longer than I had hoped. I dragged myself out of bed, not because I felt motivated, but because I had decided the day before that I would follow my daily practices, regardless of how I felt. I reviewed my vision without enthusiasm. I updated my evidence log, mechanically. I reminded myself of my capability without believing the words. I wanted to stay in bed. I wanted to skip the daily practices I had established. I wanted to watch TV, scroll social media, or do anything that would numb the discomfort of facing another difficult day. I wanted rescue, rest, or escape from the responsibility I had claimed for my life. This is the moment when most transformation attempts fail, the moment when motivation dies and you're left alone with the choice between discipline and default patterns. The moment when you discover whether you're serious about change or just temporarily inspired by the idea of change. But I did it, and in doing it, I learned the most important lesson of my entire transformation. Discipline isn't about feeling like doing something, it's about doing it, especially when you don't feel like it. The motivation myth. We've been sold a lie about how change happens. The lie says that you need to feel motivated before you can take action, that inspiration precedes execution, and that sustained effort requires sustained enthusiasm. Think about physical exercise. Few people wake up excited to work out. Most people feel resistance, inertia, and the desire to skip it. But those who actually achieve fitness don't wait for the desire to appear before going to the gym. They go to the gym despite the lack of desire, and often find that once they're there and moving, the resistance dissolves and energy appears. The truth is the opposite. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. You don't need to feel like doing something to do it. You need to do it despite not feeling like it. And the motivation often emerges as you're already in motion. This lie keeps most people trapped in cycles of starting and stopping, bursts of intense effort followed by periods of complete inactivity. They wait to feel motivated before acting, and when motivation inevitably fades, they stop acting until the next wave of inspiration strikes. The same principle applies to every behavior required for transformation. You won't feel like making sales calls when you're facing rejection. You won't feel like reviewing your finances when they're discouraging. You won't feel like maintaining your practices when you're exhausted. But doing these things despite not feeling like it is precisely what separates people who transform from people who just think about transforming. Building your discipline foundation. That Wednesday, I created what I now call my discipline foundation, the minimum viable behaviors that I would execute every single day, regardless of circumstances, emotions, or results. The first behavior was client outreach. Every day, I would contact at least 5 potential clients, regardless of how I felt about my chances or how the previous day's outreach had gone. This behavior ensured consistent deal flow and prevented me from becoming passive about business development. This foundation consisted of 4 core behaviors, chosen because they directly advanced my goal of rebuilding my business while being simple enough to maintain even on my worst days. The second behavior was skill development. Every day, I would spend at least 30 minutes learning something that improved my professional capabilities. This behavior ensured that I was becoming more valuable and capable even if external results were slow to materialize. The third behavior was financial discipline. Every day, I would review my financial situation, update my budget, and make at least one decision that improved my financial position. This behavior prevented me from avoiding my financial reality and ensured I was taking concrete steps towards stability. The fourth behavior was evidence documentation. Every day, I would update my evidence log with actions taken and results produced. This behavior maintained my psychological momentum by ensuring I could see progress even when it felt invisible. These 4 behaviors were deliberately modest. I could complete all of them in less than 2 hours, even on a terrible day. But their power came from consistency, not from intensity. Doing these 4 things every single day for a month would create more progress than doing 20 things on the days I felt motivated, followed by nothing on the days I didn't. The most important principle in building sustainable discipline is what I call the never miss twice rule. You will occasionally miss your core behaviors. Circumstances will disrupt your routine. Emergencies will consume your time, or you'll simply fail to execute despite your best intentions. 1 miss is a deviation. 2 consecutive misses is the beginning of a new pattern. 3 consecutive misses means you've abandoned the discipline entirely. The never miss twice rule. The never miss twice rule means that if you miss your behaviors on Monday, you absolutely must execute them on Tuesday, regardless of circumstances. If you skip your workout on Wednesday, you cannot skip it again on Thursday. If you avoid your financial review on Friday, you must complete it on Saturday, without exception. I violated this rule exactly once during my transformation week. On Thursday, I was so consumed with a client emergency that I failed to complete my skill development practice. That meant Friday's skill development was non-negotiable regardless of what else demanded my attention. I protected that 30 minutes as if my transformation depended on it, because in a very real sense, it did. This rule acknowledges human imperfection while preventing the gradual erosion that destroys most discipline attempts. It creates a hard boundary between temporary setbacks and permanent abandonment. Identify 3 to 5 behaviors that, if performed consistently, would guarantee progress toward your primary goal. These should be specific, measurable, and simple enough to complete even on difficult days. They should directly advance your objective rather than being general self-improvement activities. Today is about establishing your discipline foundation, the core behaviors you'll execute daily, regardless of how you feel or what results you're seeing. Your Day 3 challenge. Create a tracking system for these behaviors. This can be as simple as a checklist or as sophisticated as an app. The key is visibility. You need to see clearly whether you're maintaining consistency or allowing gaps to appear. For each behavior, define both your ideal execution and your minimum viable version. If your ideal is to contact 10 potential clients, your minimum might be to contact 3. If your ideal is to exercise for an hour, your minimum might be to do 10 minutes of movement. The minimum ensures you can maintain your streak even when circumstances aren't ideal. Commit to these behaviors for the next 7 days without exception. Use the never miss twice rule to handle inevitable disruptions. If you miss on one day, make the next day absolutely non-negotiable. This is discipline, not the excitement of starting something new, but the grinding choice to continue when the novelty has worn off and you're left alone with your commitment. Understand that you will not feel like doing these behaviors most days, especially early in the process. Do them anyway. Do them before the motivation appears. Do them when you're tired, discouraged, or doubting whether they're making a difference. The person you're becoming is forged in these unglamorous moments of continuing when quitting would be easier. Tomorrow, we'll explore how to eliminate the distractions that make maintaining discipline unnecessarily difficult. But today, establish your foundation and execute it once, regardless of how you feel. Your transformation depends on this skill more than any other. Day 4. Ruthless elimination. I would sit down to make client calls and suddenly remember I needed to check email. I would start my skill development practice and get interrupted by social media notifications. I would begin financial review and find myself researching tangential information that felt productive but didn't advance my actual goal. By Thursday morning, I had established my daily disciplines and was maintaining them despite difficulty, but I noticed something troubling. I was spending enormous amounts of energy fighting against distractions that pulled me away from my core behaviors. Thursday, the distraction audit. Understanding attention economic. That Thursday, I conducted what I now call a distraction audit, a systematic examination of everything competing for my attention and a ruthless elimination of anything that didn't directly serve my transformation. I was maintaining my disciplines, but barely, and the constant battle against distraction was exhausting. I realized that I was trying to build discipline in an environment designed to fragment my attention. I needed to eliminate the distractions rather than constantly fight against them. Before eliminating distractions, you need to understand what distraction actually costs you. Most people dramatically underestimate the true price of fragmented attention because they only calculate the time spent on the distracting activity itself. If you check your phone for 5 minutes, you might think you've lost 5 minutes, but research on attention residue shows that switching tasks leaves part of your attention stuck on the previous task, reducing your cognitive capacity for the current task. That 5-minute phone check actually costs you 15 to 20 minutes of degraded performance as your brain struggles to fully re-engage with your original task. Multiply this effect across a day of constant switching, and you realize that distraction doesn't steal minutes, it steals your entire capacity for deep work. You might be working for 8 hours, but if you're being interrupted every 15 minutes, you're never reaching the depth of focus required for your most valuable work. The 3 categories of elimination. This calculation made the distraction audit non-negotiable. I couldn't afford to keep hemorrhaging attention to activities that didn't serve my transformation. I calculated that my pre-transformation schedule involved an average of 40 context switches per day, each costing approximately 15 minutes of degraded performance. That meant I was losing 10 hours of productive capacity daily to attention fragmentation. I was working 12-hour days but only producing 2 hours of actual value. The first category was obviously wasteful activities with no value and easy alternatives. These included mindless social media scrolling, news consumption that made me anxious without making me informed, and television that numbed me without refreshing me. My distraction audit revealed that distractions fell into 3 categories, each requiring a different elimination approach. Eliminating these required simple environmental changes. I deleted social media apps from my phone, installed browser extensions that blocked news sites during work hours, and cancelled my streaming service subscriptions. These changes didn't require willpower to maintain because the distractions were no longer easily accessible. Eliminating these required difficult conversations and uncomfortable decisions. I resigned from a non-profit board I enjoyed. I declined standing invitations to monthly meetups. I stopped taking online courses that interested me but didn't advance my business skills. Each decision felt like limiting my options, but I was actually expanding my capacity by freeing attention for what actually mattered. The second category was productive-seeming activities that provided value but didn't serve my current priority. These included volunteer commitments, networking events that felt useful but led nowhere, and learning activities unrelated to my immediate needs. The third category was legitimate obligations that truly needed to be done but were consuming disproportionate time relative to their importance. These included certain client relationships that generated minimal revenue while requiring maximum attention, administrative tasks I was doing myself that could be delegated or automated, and perfectionist standards for work that didn't require perfection. Eliminating these required strategic thinking about leverage and efficiency. I fired my 2 lowest revenue clients, who consumed 40% of my time. I hired a virtual assistant for $15 per hour to handle administrative work that was costing me $100 per hour in opportunity cost. I adopted good enough standards for routine tasks that freed me to pursue excellence on high-impact work. Your Day 4 Challenge. Today is about conducting your own distraction audit and ruthlessly eliminating what doesn't serve your transformation. This requires honesty about how you're actually spending your time and courage to make changes that might disappoint or surprise people around you. Second, categorize your distractions using the 3 categories I've described. Identify activities that are obviously wasteful, productive seeming, but not aligned with your priority, and legitimate but consuming disproportionate time. First, track your attention for one full day. Every time you switch activities, note what you are doing and what you switch to. Don't try to change your behavior, just document it honestly. By the end of the day, you'll have a complete picture of where your attention actually goes versus where you think it goes. Third, create elimination plans for each category. For wasteful activities, implement environmental changes that remove access or add friction. For productive-seeming misalignments, make decisions to decline, resign, or postpone. For disproportionate obligations, identify opportunities to delegate, automate, or reduce standards. Fourth, execute at least 3 eliminations today. Delete apps, have conversations, or make decisions that free up attention for what actually matters. Choose the eliminations that will have the biggest impact on your available focus. Understand that elimination will feel uncomfortable. You'll worry about missing information, disappointing people, or closing off opportunities. But remember, every yes to something is a no to something else. Your scattered attention has been saying no to your transformation. Ruthless elimination allows you to finally say yes to what matters most. Tomorrow, we'll explore how to take complete ownership of your results and stop blaming external factors for your circumstances. But today, eliminate what's stealing your attention and preventing your disciplines from producing results. Your transformation requires focus. Create the conditions where focus is possible. Day 5. Total ownership. Friday. The blame inventory. My immediate reaction was defensive anger. I had a detailed rebuttal prepared in my mind within seconds. His accusations were unfair, incomplete, and ignored his own contributions to our failure. I wanted to explain everything he had gotten wrong, justify every decision he was criticizing, and shift blame back to where I felt it belonged. Friday began with a text from my former business partner. He was angry, accusing me of mismanaging our company and blaming me for its collapse. His message was filled with specific grievances about decisions I had made, opportunities I had missed, and responsibilities I had neglected. Understanding the blame trap, but then I stopped myself, because I realized that whether his accusations were fair or not, responding defensively would keep me trapped in victimhood. As long as I was focused on determining whose fault our failure was, I wasn't focused on what I could control moving forward. This realization led to one of the most painful but transformative exercises of my entire journey, the blame inventory. Blame is the most seductive trap in personal development. It feels righteous to identify the external factors that contributed to your problems. It feels accurate to note what other people did wrong or what circumstances worked against you. It feels necessary to defend yourself against unfair criticism. Blame keeps you focused on the past and on variables beyond your control. Ownership keeps you focused on the future and on what you can influence through your choices and actions. But blame, even when justified, is poison to transformation, because every moment spent determining fault is a moment not spent identifying solutions. Every piece of energy invested in proving you were wronged is energy unavailable for creating change. Every mental cycle devoted to cataloging others' failures is a cycle you can't use to improve your own decisions. Conducting your blame inventory. The challenge is that ownership feels like accepting blame, like admitting that everything is your fault. But ownership and blame are completely different mental frameworks serving opposite purposes. Blame is about determining who deserves criticism for past failures. Ownership is about claiming power over future outcomes. Blame is about justice and fairness. Ownership is about effectiveness and agency. Blame keeps you trapped in powerlessness. Ownership sets you free to create change. This question was crucial because it shifted focus from what I couldn't control to what I could have controlled. It didn't deny that external factors existed or mattered, but it refused to let those factors become excuses for my own choices. Instead of responding to my partner's accusations, I spent Friday morning conducting a systematic blame inventory. I made a list of every significant disappointment, failure, and setback I had experienced in the previous 5 years. For each item, I wrote down the story I typically told about why it happened, including all the external factors and other people's contributions. Then came the difficult part. For each external factor I had identified, I asked myself, what could I have done differently that might have changed this outcome, even if the external factor remained the same. Every external factor that had contributed to my failure was connected to earlier decisions I had made or warning signs I had ignored. I couldn't change what my partner had done, but I could acknowledge that I had missed red flags during our initial partnership discussions. I couldn't control client decisions, but I could recognize that I had neglected relationship maintenance and failed to diversify my client base. This wasn't about self-blame or guilt. It was about reclaiming power, because if my decisions had contributed to my failure, then better decisions could contribute to my success. The variables I had been treating as beyond my control were actually connected to choices I could make differently moving forward. When I examined my business failure through this lens, patterns emerged that I had been avoiding. Yes, my partner had underperformed, but I had chosen that partner without adequate due diligence. Yes, clients had left, but I had built a business model too dependent on too few accounts. Yes, market conditions had shifted, but I had ignored warning signs because I was too invested in my original vision. The first level is outcome ownership. This means accepting that you are responsible for your current circumstances, regardless of how you got there or who contributed to creating them. Even if 90% of your problems were caused by other people or external events, you own 100% of the responsibility for improving your situation from this point forward. The 3 levels of ownership. Through my blame inventory, I discovered that ownership operates on 3 distinct levels, each building on the previous one. When I accepted outcome ownership, I stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and started asking, "What am I going to do about it?" This shift didn't make my problems magically disappear, but it transformed them from immutable facts about my life into challenges I could address through action. The second level is response ownership. This means accepting that you are responsible for how you respond to everything that happens, regardless of whether those events are fair, reasonable, or deserved. You don't control what life presents to you, but you have complete control over what you do with what you receive. When I accepted response ownership, I stopped justifying my reactions based on circumstances. I stopped saying I had to react that way because of what they did, and started recognizing that my responses were choices, not inevitable consequences. This didn't mean I always made perfect choices, but it meant I stopped pretending my choices were forced upon me by external factors. The third level is pattern ownership. This means accepting that recurring problems in your life likely indicate patterns in your thinking, decision-making, or behavior that you haven't yet identified or addressed. If you keep experiencing similar disappointments across different situations, the common variable is you. When I accepted pattern ownership, I stopped seeing each failure as an isolated incident and started looking for the threads connecting them. I discovered patterns of avoiding difficult conversations, waiting too long to address problems, and hoping situations would improve without my intervention. These patterns had shown up in my business, my marriage, my finances, and my health. Addressing them required changing not just my circumstances, but my fundamental approach to challenges. Your Day 5 Challenge. Second, for each item on your list, write the story you typically tell about why this problem exists. Include all the external factors you normally cite, other people's behavior, circumstances beyond your control, bad timing, lack of resources, unfair treatment, or unfortunate events. Today is about taking complete ownership of your life through the same blame inventory process I used. This will be uncomfortable, but it's essential for breaking free from victimhood and claiming your power to create change. First, list every significant disappointment, failure, or challenge you're currently facing or have faced in recent years. Include professional setbacks, relationship difficulties, financial problems, health issues, and any other area where you're not getting the results you want. Fourth, look for patterns across your list. Are there common themes in how you make decisions, handle conflict, respond to challenges, or interact with others? These patterns reveal the deeper work you need to do beyond addressing surface-level problems. Finally, write a commitment statement claiming ownership of your outcomes, responses, and patterns. Something like, "I accept complete responsibility for my current circumstances and commit to taking whatever actions are necessary to improve them, regardless of external factors or other people's behavior." Third, here's the critical step. For each external factor you've identified, ask yourself, what could I have done differently that might have changed this outcome, even if the external factor remained the same? Force yourself to identify at least one choice, decision or action within your control that could have influenced the situation. Tomorrow we'll explore how to push through the breaking points that will inevitably test your commitment. But today, claim your power by taking complete ownership of your life. The moment you stop blaming is the moment your transformation accelerates. This exercise isn't about self-blame or denying that external factors exist. It's about refusing to let those factors become excuses that keep you trapped in powerlessness. It's about recognizing that your greatest power lies in what you do with your circumstances, not in what circumstances you're given. Day 6. Breaking through breaking points. Saturday, the crisis that tests everything. In that moment, I understood why most transformation attempts fail. They fail not because people don't know what to do, but because they can't endure the pain of doing it when results don't materialize as quickly as hoped. They fail at breaking points like this one, when continuing forward requires accessing reserves of determination most people never discover. Saturday morning brought the crisis I had been dreading. I received news that a major opportunity I had been counting on had fallen through. This wasn't just another setback. This was the linchpin of my entire recovery plan, the contract that would have stabilized my finances and validated my decision to keep building rather than accept defeat. I sat at my kitchen table reading the rejection email 3 times, feeling the familiar pull of despair. All week I had been taking action, maintaining discipline, eliminating distractions, and claiming ownership. But none of it had prevented this devastating blow. The temptation to quit was stronger than it had been since Monday. But then I remembered something my mentor had told me years earlier. The moment you most want to quit is usually the moment right before your breakthrough. Everyone who achieves something significant reaches this point. Winners are simply people who decide to continue for one more day after everyone else would have quit. I could feel myself at a crossroads. One path led back to waiting for rescue, accepting defeat, and constructing elaborate explanations for why my situation was beyond my control. The other path led deeper into uncertainty, requiring me to continue taking action despite this setback, and trust that the accumulated effort would eventually reach a tipping point. For about 30 minutes, I genuinely considered the first path. I mentally composed the emails I would send announcing I was shutting down my business. I imagined the relief I would feel from releasing the burden of responsibility I had claimed. I rehearsed the story I would tell about giving entrepreneurship my best effort, but accepting that it wasn't meant to be. Breaking points aren't aberrations in the journey towards significant goals. They're inevitable features of the terrain. If your goals don't push you to points where quitting seems rational, they're probably not ambitious enough to produce transformative results. Understanding breaking points. The psychology of breaking points is fascinating. They typically occur not at the beginning of a difficult journey, when motivation is high, but in the messy middle, when the novelty has worn off, results are still modest, and the gap between effort invested and outcomes achieved creates cognitive dissonance. This pattern means that breaking points often occur right before breakthroughs. You push and push with seemingly little progress, become convinced nothing is working, and contemplate quitting. Then, if you continue just a bit longer, the accumulated effort reaches critical mass and everything shifts rapidly. Your brain interprets this gap as evidence that your efforts aren't working. It generates compelling arguments about why continuing is foolish rather than courageous. It offers you the comfort of quitting disguised as wisdom about knowing when to cut your losses. But here's what your brain doesn't understand during breaking points. Significant results rarely appear linearly. You don't invest 1 unit of effort and receive 1 unit of results consistently over time. Instead, you invest enormous effort with modest returns for extended periods, then suddenly reach a tipping point where accumulated effort produces exponential results. My breaking point strategy. This decision accomplished several important things. First, it prevented me from making a permanent decision during temporary emotional turmoil. Second, it gave me time to process the disappointment without immediately reacting to it. Third, it ensured I would continue taking action during a period when inaction would have been most tempting. Sitting at my kitchen table that Saturday morning, I made a decision that saved my transformation. Instead of deciding whether to quit or continue, I decided to delay the decision for 48 hours. I wouldn't quit that day. I would continue executing my daily disciplines, maintaining my practices, and taking my scheduled actions as if the setback hadn't occurred. Then, after 48 hours of rest and perspective, I would reassess whether to continue or quit. Over those 48 hours, something shifted. The crushing disappointment gradually transformed into determination to prove I could handle setbacks without collapsing. I stopped seeing the rejection as evidence that my path was wrong and started seeing it as information about what needed to be adjusted. The Breaking Point Toolkit. By Monday morning, quitting was no longer on the table. I had pushed through my breaking point, not by eliminating the pain, but by choosing to continue despite it. And in doing so, I had built psychological resilience that would serve me through every future challenge. Through that experience, and many subsequent breaking points, I developed what I now call my Breaking Point Toolkit, a set of specific strategies for continuing when every rational calculation suggests quitting. Strategy 1. Time box the quitting decision. Never decide to quit during emotional peaks. Instead, delay the decision for a specific period, 24 hours, 48 hours, or 1 week. During that period, continue executing your practices as if you've already decided to persist. This prevents impulsive decisions driven by temporary discouragement. Strategy 3. Return to your why. When continuation at your current pace seems impossible, reduce intensity rather than quitting entirely. If you can't maintain your full practice, maintain the minimum viable version. If you can't pursue your complete vision, pursue a scaled-down version that maintains forward movement. Strategy 2. Reduce scope without abandoning direction. Read through your evidence log, documenting every action you've taken and every result it's produced. Breaking points make you forget all progress and focus exclusively on current difficulty. Reviewing concrete evidence counters this distortion. Reconnect with the original motivation that inspired your commitment. Review your vision statement. Remember what you're working toward and recall why you started this journey. This perspective shift can reignite conviction when it's fading. Strategy 4. Evidence review. When thinking about the entire journey ahead feels overwhelming, narrow your focus to the single next action you can take. Don't worry about whether you'll succeed ultimately. Just identify one thing you can do in the next hour that moves you slightly forward. Strategy 6. Seek perspective, not rescue. Strategy 5. Next step focus. Today is about preparing for the breaking points you will inevitably face. You might not be experiencing one currently, but you will. These strategies will only help if you've practiced them before the crisis arrives. Your Day 6 Challenge. Reach out to someone who has navigated similar challenges, not to ask them to solve your problem, but to gain perspective on whether what you're experiencing is normal. Often, learning that breaking points are part of every significant journey helps you normalize your experience rather than interpreting it as evidence of failure. First, create your breaking point commitment. Write down what you will do when you reach a point where quitting seems rational. Commit to specific time periods you'll delay any quitting decision, specific practices you'll maintain even in crisis, and specific people you'll contact for perspective rather than rescue. Second, prepare your breaking point toolkit. Write out each of the 6 strategies I've described in language that will resonate with you when you're discouraged. Include specific actions you'll take to implement each strategy. Make this document easily accessible so you can reference it quickly when needed. Third, if you are currently facing a breaking point, implement the time box strategy immediately. Decide that you won't make any decisions about quitting today. Commit to continuing for a specific period, 48 hours at minimum. During that period, maintain your daily disciplines regardless of how you feel. Fourth, practice next step. Focus right now. Don't think about whether you'll ultimately succeed or whether your current path is the right one. Just identify the single next action you can take that moves you slightly forward. Then take that action before you sleep tonight. Tomorrow we'll integrate everything you've learned into a sustainable system for maintaining your independence long-term. But today, prepare for the inevitable moments when your commitment will be tested, and continuing will require accessing depths of determination you didn't know you possessed. Breaking points separate people who achieve significant goals from people with comparable talent and resources who achieve modest results. The difference isn't that one group faces easier challenges. It's that one group continues through breaking points, while the other surrenders to them. Your breakthrough is often waiting just beyond your breaking point. Don't quit before you reach it. Day 7. Sustainable Independence. Sunday morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The past 6 days had fundamentally altered how I understood success, failure, and personal responsibility. I had gone from waiting for rescue to creating my own salvation. I had built mental fortresses, established discipline, eliminated distractions, claimed ownership, and survived breaking points. Sunday, integration and commitment. But I also knew that transformation doesn't end after 7 days. The real test would be maintaining these changes over weeks, months, and years as the intensity of this week faded and life returned to its normal rhythms. Most transformation attempts follow a predictable pattern. Initial enthusiasm creates dramatic changes. New practices are established. Results begin appearing. Then, gradually, the intensity fades. Practices are skipped occasionally, then regularly, then abandoned entirely. Within months, people are back where they started, convinced that lasting change is impossible for them. The sustainability problem. Sunday was about integration, about taking the principles I had discovered and creating a sustainable system that would support my independence long-term, about ensuring that this week was the beginning of a permanent shift rather than a temporary inspiration that would gradually erode. Building your sustainability system. But I had learned something crucial during this transformative week. The problem wasn't lack of willpower. The problem was trying to sustain change through willpower rather than through systems. Willpower is a limited resource that depletes under stress. Systems are structures that support desired behaviors regardless of motivation or willpower levels. I had experienced this pattern multiple times in my past. I would have powerful insights, make dramatic commitments, maintain them briefly, then gradually slide back into old patterns. Each failed attempt reinforced my belief that I lacked the willpower or discipline for sustained change. The core of the system is my set of non-negotiable minimums, the simplest possible version of each core practice that I commit to maintaining, regardless of circumstances. These minimums are deliberately easy enough to complete even on my worst days. The foundation, non-negotiable minimums. That Sunday, I created what I now call my sustainability system, the infrastructure that has maintained my transformation for 3 years since that pivotal week. My minimums include 5 client contacts daily, 20 minutes of skill development, 10 minutes of financial review, and updating my evidence log. On good days, I exceed these minimums significantly, but even on terrible days, I honor them without exception. This creates an unbreakable baseline of progress that compounds over time. The reinforcement. Weekly reviews. Every Sunday morning, I conduct a structured weekly review examining what worked, what didn't, and what needs adjustment. I review my evidence log, assess progress toward goals, identify patterns in my behavior, and make strategic decisions about the coming week. Once per month, I conduct comprehensive audits of my time allocation, commitment load, and distraction levels. This monthly check-in catches slow erosion before it becomes significant regression. Distractions creep back in gradually. Commitments accumulate slowly. These audits identify and eliminate them before they fragment my focus. The protection. Monthly audits. This weekly review prevents me from continuing ineffective approaches too long while ensuring I maintain perspective on my trajectory rather than getting lost in daily details. It's the mechanism that keeps my efforts aligned with my vision over extended periods. Every 3 months, I revisit and update my vision statement. Goals achieved are celebrated and replaced with new ones. Approaches that aren't working are modified. The vision itself evolves as I grow and my capabilities expand. This prevents my system from becoming rigid or disconnected from my actual development. The evolution. Quarterly vision updates. The community. Accountability partnership. I deliberately celebrate wins, both large and small. Every client gained, every skill developed, every discipline maintained for 30 consecutive days. Celebration reinforces the behaviors I want to continue while providing emotional fuel for the journey. The celebration. Progress recognition. I established an accountability partnership with someone else pursuing significant goals. We meet weekly to share progress, challenges, and lessons learned. This creates external accountability that complements internal discipline while providing perspective and support during difficult periods. Your Day 7 Challenge. Today is about creating your own sustainability system using the framework I've described. This requires thinking beyond the current week to how you'll maintain these practices over the months and years ahead. First, define your non-negotiable minimums. For each core practice you've established this week, identify the simplest version you can commit to maintaining even on your worst days. These minimums should be easy enough that you have no excuse to skip them, but substantial enough to maintain forward momentum. Fourth, find or create your accountability partnership. Identify someone who is also pursuing significant transformation and propose a weekly check-in structure. This person doesn't need to be pursuing the same goals as you, just someone who understands the journey and will hold you accountable to your commitments. Second, schedule your weekly review. Choose a specific day and time when you'll assess your previous week and plan your coming week. Block this time on your calendar as non-negotiable. Create a template or checklist of questions you'll address during each review. Third, establish your monthly audit process. Set recurring reminders to conduct comprehensive reviews of your time allocation, commitment load, and distraction levels. Create criteria for what merits elimination or adjustment. Fifth, plan your first celebration. Identify a specific milestone you'll reach within the next 30 days and decide how you'll celebrate it. This establishes the pattern of recognizing progress rather than only focusing on gaps between current reality and ultimate vision. The life that awaits. Finally, write your independence declaration. This is your formal commitment to maintaining self-reliance regardless of circumstances. Include the specific behaviors you commit to, the principles you'll honor, and what you're choosing to build rather than wait for. Sign and date this declaration. Review it during your weekly reviews. But the external achievements, while significant, aren't what matter most. What matters most is that I no longer wake up waiting for someone to save me. I no longer look outside myself for permission, validation, or opportunity. I no longer interpret obstacles as evidence that I should quit, or that life is unfair. I wake up knowing that my life is my responsibility. My choices determine my trajectory, and my discipline creates my results. This knowledge has transformed everything about how I move through the world. 3 years have passed since my transformative week. The business I rebuilt has exceeded my previous venture in every meaningful metric. My marriage has strengthened through honest communication and mutual support. My financial situation has stabilized and grown. My confidence has become unshakable because it's based on evidence of capability rather than external validation. Conclusion. Your independence begins now. This same transformation is available to you, not because I have secrets I haven't shared or because you need special advantages, simply because you're willing to accept the truth that nobody is coming to save you and that this truth is liberating rather than limiting. Let me summarize the principles that will guide you forward from this moment. We've completed 7 days together. 7 days that have the potential to transform your entire life if you choose to apply what you've learned. Day 1. The rescue fantasy must die. You learned that waiting for external salvation keeps you trapped in powerlessness. Nobody is coming to save you, and accepting this truth is the first step toward creating your own rescue through independent action. Day 2. Build your mental fortress. You discovered how to protect your vision from doubt by creating conviction architecture, clarity of vision, evidence logging, selective input, and daily reinforcement practices that maintain your commitment when others question your path. Day 3. Discipline beats motivation. Day 4. Eliminate ruthlessly. You understood that sustainable transformation comes from doing what needs to be done regardless of how you feel. You established core behaviors and minimum standards that maintain progress even when motivation disappears. Day 5. Own everything completely. You learn to conduct distraction audits and eliminate anything that fragments your focus. You discovered that saying no to good opportunities creates space for great ones, and that concentration is your competitive advantage. You accepted total ownership of your outcomes, responses, and patterns. You stopped blaming external factors for your circumstances and claimed power over your future by focusing exclusively on what you can control. Day 7. Build sustainable system. You prepared for the inevitable moments when quitting seems rational by developing a breaking point toolkit. You learned that the moment you most want to quit is often right before your breakthrough. Day 6. Breakthrough beyond breaking points. You created infrastructure for maintaining your transformation through non-negotiable minimums, weekly reviews, monthly audits, accountability partnerships, and celebration of progress. The week is over, but your journey is just beginning. Everything you've learned becomes real only through consistent application over time. The principles remain theoretical until they become practiced. The insights remain interesting until they become integrated. Your path forward. Week 2-4. Establish your baseline. Here's what I want you to do in the coming weeks. Focus exclusively on maintaining your non-negotiable minimums without trying to do more. Build the habit of daily execution before increasing intensity. Prove to yourself that you can maintain consistency for 21 days straight. Once your baseline is solid, gradually increase intensity, add to your core practices, pursue bigger challenges, say yes to opportunities that previously would have intimidated you. Use your growing confidence to expand your ambitions. Month 4-6. Navigate your first major breaking point. Month 2-3. Build momentum. You will hit a significant breaking point during this period. Everything we discussed on day 6 will be tested. Use your breaking point toolkit. Delay quitting decisions. Maintain next step focus. Seek perspective from your accountability partner. This is where your transformation either solidifies or erodes. Month 7-12. Demonstrate sustainability. Endrikine. If you reach month 7, maintaining your practices, you've crossed the threshold from temporary change to permanent transformation. Your new behaviors have become habitual. Self-reliance has become your default response. Independence has become your identity. My final message. 3 years ago, I was sitting in a parking lot waiting for someone to save me. Today, I'm writing these words to help you understand that the person capable of saving you is already there, waiting for you to activate them through choice, discipline, and commitment. The rescue you've been waiting for will never arrive because you are the rescue. The strength you've been hoping someone would give you is already within you, waiting to be developed through consistent practice. The life you want to live is waiting for you to stop asking permission and start building it. This week gave you the principles. The coming months will reveal whether you have the discipline to apply them. The coming years will demonstrate whether you have the persistence to maintain them. Nobody is coming to save you. And once you truly accept this truth, you'll discover you don't need them to. You already have everything required to create the life you want. Your independence begins now. Take the first step today. Take the next step tomorrow. Keep taking steps until the distance traveled makes your starting point unrecognizable. The person you're becoming is forged through these daily choices. The life you're building is constructed through these consistent practices. The freedom you're claiming is earned through your willingness to save yourself rather than wait for rescue. Go build what you're meant to build. Go become who you're meant to become. Go claim the independence that has been waiting for you to declare it. Your transformation is no longer theoretical. It's real, it's beginning, and it depends entirely on you. Welcome to your independent life.